Imagine for a moment that you have a secret button inside your body. Push it, and your internal systems launch a massive, deep cleanse. Your cells start gobbling up old waste, damaged proteins, and getting rid of everything that clogs the works and stops them from functioning properly. Sounds like science fiction, doesn't it? Well, what if I told you that button is simply hunger? The internet today is absolutely buzzing with stories of miraculous rejuvenation through fasting. But right alongside those success stories, we find heartbreaking accounts of fatal errors. This is especially true when we talk about people over the age of 60. So, where does the truth lie? Is fasting for older adults genuinely a path to a renewed body and a sharper mind, or is it a reckless gamble with your health? In this video, we're going to separate the myths from the facts. We will carefully weigh the potential for rejuvenation against the very real, often deadly risks, using solid scientific evidence. And I promise you, by the end of this session, you will know exactly whether fasting is your true ally in the fight for longevity or an enemy that you must avoid at all costs. Have you ever stopped to wonder why the exact same practice can cure one person, yet completely harm another? The answer might genuinely shock you. Before we dive into the latest cutting-edge science, let's take a crucial step back. Fasting isn't just some passing Silicon Valley fad or a new health craze. This is a practice that stretches back thousands of years. Almost every major world religion, from Christianity and Islam to Buddhism and Judaism, incorporates periods of spiritual fasting. The ancient Greeks, including Hippocrates, the father of medicine, believed that abstaining from food purified both the body and the mind. It was seen as a vital tool for spiritual and physical cleansing. But what was simply intuitive practice for our ancestors has received powerful scientific backing in the 21st century. The breakthrough moment came with the discovery by the Japanese scientist Yoshinori Ohsumi. In 2016, he was awarded the Nobel Prize for revealing the mechanisms of autophagy. This word, which literally translates to self-eating, became the crucial key to understanding what actually happens inside our bodies when we intentionally stop eating. Ohsumi demonstrated that hunger acts as a direct signal, telling the cells to begin processing and recycling their own internal junk. This discovery turned an ancient spiritual practice into one of the hottest topics in modern biomedicine. But here is the paradox we must confront. Our ancestors were far more physically active and consumed completely different diets. Today's senior citizen lives in dramatically different circumstances. Blindly copying ancient practices or following the advice of young, trendy biohackers could lead straight to disaster. Let's break down exactly how this mechanism works and where that very fine line lies between genuine benefit and serious harm. So let's start with the real star of the show, the magic called autophagy. What exactly is it, put simply? Picture your cell as a busy, tiny city. It's got power plants, the mitochondria, factories churning out proteins, the ribosomes, and a dedicated transport network. Over time, this city accumulates rubbish, old, broken parts, manufacturing waste, and damaged structures. If this debris isn't cleared away, the city descends into chaos, its functions break down, and ultimately, it collapses. Autophagy is essentially the cell's internal waste management system, its dedicated cleanup crew. When the cell is under stress, for instance, during fasting or periods of hunger, it activates special mechanisms. It forms little membrane sacs called autophagosomes. These sacs act like tiny garbage trucks, travelling through the cell, scooping up all that junk, damaged mitochondria, misfolded proteins, even viral remnants. They then deliver this waste to the cell's recycling plant, the lysosome. Inside the lysosome, powerful enzymes break down all that debris into fundamental building blocks, amino acids and fatty acids. The truly amazing part is that the cell doesn't just throw them out. It reuses them immediately to build new, healthy structures and generate energy. It's an incredibly efficient process of renewal and recycling. This is exactly why autophagy is so closely linked to rejuvenation. It literally cleanses us from the inside out, right down to the cellular level. However, the older we get, the slower and less effective this internal cleanup crew becomes. The rubbish piles up, and that build-up is what contributes to many age-related diseases. Fasting, in turn, is scientifically known to be the single most powerful natural stimulant for this process. It's like giving your internal cleaning company a massive necessary kickstart. So, why is this process, autophagy, essentially our body's internal clear-up system, so critically important precisely as we age? Sadly, as the years pile on, our bodies don't get more efficient, do they? Renewal processes slow down, and the number of little breakdowns at the cellular level just keeps increasing. Think of it like an old motor that's racked up hundreds of thousands of miles. It starts collecting worn-out parts. The oil might be leaking a bit. The electronics start playing up. Much the same thing happens inside our cells. They accumulate what are called senescent, or aging cells. We often call them zombie cells. They don't divide anymore, and they certainly don't perform their job properly, but they refuse to die off. Instead, they just sit there in our tissues, spewing out a cocktail of harmful inflammatory substances. They essentially poison the surrounding healthy cells and speed up the aging process for the whole body. On top of that, damaged proteins start building up, sometimes clumping together into toxic aggregates. The most well-known example of this is the amyloid plaques found in the brain, which are strongly linked to Alzheimer's disease. Even our mitochondria, the little powerhouses of our cells, start wearing out. They produce less energy and, unfortunately, create more damaging free radicals. All this cellular debris is truly one of the fundamental causes of aging itself and the development of most age-related diseases, everything from heart trouble and diabetes right through to neurodegeneration and cancer. And this is where autophagy truly takes centre stage. When we're young, it's active enough to keep everything spick and span. But as we get older, its activity naturally declines. Fasting, however, as we've discussed, essentially forces this cleanup mechanism into overdrive. It compels the body to get rid of those zombie cells, break down toxic protein clusters, and recycle those faulty mitochondria. This isn't just a simple tidy up. This is a fundamental, deep cleaning process that has the potential to reverse some of the core mechanisms of aging, right down at that most basic cellular level. When we talk about feeling young, we usually focus on the superficial, that firm skin, those strong muscles, but what's really powering all that is a complex symphony of hormones. A key player in this whole system is somatotropin, or human growth hormone, HGH. Now, many people mistakenly believe HGH is only important when we're children and teenagers, back when we're actually growing. That, however, is a huge misunderstanding. In our adult years, and especially as we get older, growth hormone performs crucial maintenance and repair work for our tissues. It's responsible for holding onto muscle mass, keeping our bones dense, helping us burn fat, and generally influencing our overall mood and energy levels. Naturally, as we age, our HGH production starts to decline. This is precisely why older adults struggle to maintain muscle, why our bones become more fragile, and why body fat seems to accumulate so much easier. Now here's the really interesting part. What happens when we introduce fasting? The research results are nothing short of astonishing. Short periods of fasting can boost HGH production manifold. We're talking increases of up to 2,000% in some men and 1,300% in women. How does this magic work? Fasting radically lowers our blood insulin levels. You see, insulin and growth hormone are antagonists. They work against each other. When insulin is high, HGH production is suppressed. But when we fast and insulin drops right down, the body gets a clear signal to ramp up somatotropin production. Why? It's a survival mechanism. Without food coming in, the body needs to protect its most valuable asset, your muscles, while accessing stored energy from fat reserves. HGH is the key hormone that facilitates this entire process. For anyone in their later years, this is truly a gift. Boosting your growth hormone naturally, without needles or side effects, can genuinely help fight muscle loss, strengthen your bones, and significantly improve your body composition. It provides a powerful, natural argument that smart fasting can indeed be a key tool for genuine rejuvenation. Let's talk about a silent, cunning enemy that creeps up on many of us as we get older. It's called insulin resistance. Now, what exactly is it? Imagine your cells are little houses and insulin is the key that opens the doors to let glucose in. Glucose being our body's main source of energy. When you eat, especially carbohydrates, your blood sugar level goes up. Your pancreas then produces insulin, which rushes around like a gatekeeper, unlocking the cell doors to let that glucose inside. However, if we eat too often, particularly sugary treats and processed refined foods, the pancreas has to churn out more and more insulin. Your cells are constantly hearing a knock at the door, and eventually they stop responding. It's as if the locks on those doors have rusted shut. That, in a nutshell, is insulin resistance. Your cells simply become deaf to the signals the insulin is sending. As a result, glucose can't get in, and its level in the bloodstream remains stubbornly high. This is the direct road to prediabetes and type 2 diabetes, an epidemic we are seeing among older people today. But the consequences are much wider than just diabetes. High levels of insulin and glucose trigger chronic inflammation, damage your blood vessels, lead to weight gain, especially that stubborn visceral fat around the middle, and significantly increase your risk of cardiovascular disease and even some cancers. So, how does fasting help here? Think of it as hitting the reset button on your entire metabolic system. When you aren't eating, your blood glucose naturally drops. Your pancreas gets a much-needed rest. It doesn't have to produce insulin. The insulin levels in your blood fall right back down to their baseline. This gives your cells a crucial break. They start to hear that quiet knock of insulin again, and their sensitivity is restored. It's like the locks on those doors are finally being oiled. Even short periods of intermittent fasting, for example, the 16-8 schedule, can dramatically improve your insulin sensitivity. For an older person, this is one of the most powerful tools available for preventing, and sometimes even reversing, the metabolic disorders that underpin so many of the common ailments of aging. We hear the word inflammation a lot, and we usually think of it as something ghastly, don't we? But actually, acute inflammation, the sharp, immediate kind, is a vital, life-saving process. Think about when you cut your finger. The area goes red and swells up. That's your immune system leaping into action, fighting off germs and kick-starting the healing process. The real nasty business starts when inflammation becomes chronic and low-grade. Imagine a small fire constantly smouldering away inside your body. It's not fierce enough to cause obvious symptoms, but it's slowly and surely damaging your tissues and organs. That slow-burning fire, that's chronic inflammation. Nowadays, scientists believe this low-level smoulder is one of the main drivers of aging and the root cause of many chronic conditions, things like heart disease, atherosclerosis, arthritis, diabetes, neurodegenerative issues, and even cancer. So what exactly stokes this fire? Poor diet, lots of sugar and processed foods, lack of sleep, stress, and excess weight, especially that stubborn fat around the middle. As we get older, our body's ability to control these inflammatory responses naturally declines. This process, which experts have rather cleverly dubbed inflammaging, inflammation plus aging, really starts to pick up speed. So, how on earth can fasting help us put out this internal fire? Firstly, as we've discussed, fasting lowers insulin resistance and blood sugar levels. And high sugar, remember, is one of the main culprits for lighting the flame. Secondly, fasting helps burn off that deep visceral fat, which acts like a small factory constantly churning out inflammatory molecules. Thirdly, when we fast, the body switches to using ketones for fuel. Ketones aren't just energy, they have powerful anti-inflammatory properties. dampening the activity of certain genes responsible for inflammation. Finally, the process of autophagy, triggered by a period of fasting, helps clean up cellular debris, that is, the cellular junk, which, if left lying around, can provoke the immune system and cause even more inflammation. So, fasting tackles chronic inflammation from several angles at once, genuinely helping your body to cool things down and stop those damaging processes in their tracks. Let's start with a rather remarkable fact. Our brain is the biggest energy hog in the body. It only accounts for about 2% of your total body weight, but it devours up to 20% of all the energy you consume. As we get older, its performance can unfortunately start to decline. We begin struggling to recall names, find it harder to concentrate, and in the most serious cases, we face devastating conditions like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease. So the big question is, can fasting really act as a shield for our brain? Well, the research data looks incredibly promising. The brain's usual fuel source is glucose, but when glucose is scarce, like during a period of fasting, the liver switches gears. It starts producing an alternative fuel from fats. These are called ketone bodies. It turns out that especially for an aging brain, ketones might actually be a cleaner and far more efficient energy source than glucose. Think of it as switching your car from standard petrol to a high-octane performance fuel. But that's only part of the story. Fasting triggers the production of a remarkable substance called brain-derived neurotrophic factor, or BDNF. Scientists often refer to this as fertilizer for the brain. BDNF stimulates the growth of brand new neurons, a process known as neurogenesis. It strengthens the existing connections between them, the synapses, and crucially, it protects nerve cells from damage. High BDNF levels are associated with better memory, improved learning ability, and protection against depression. Unfortunately, production declines with age, but fasting is one of the most powerful natural ways we have to boost it. Furthermore, autophagy, which we've discussed quite a bit already, plays an absolutely crucial role in cleaning the brain. It clears out toxic protein plaques, such as beta amyloid and tau protein, hallmark signs of Alzheimer's disease. Imagine that fasting activates an entire cleanup crew within your brain, actively seeking out and recycling this dangerous cellular waste. So fasting can protect the brain in 3 powerful ways: by providing it with superior fuel, by stimulating its renewal and growth, and by constantly clearing out harmful toxins. For any older person hoping to maintain mental sharpness well into their twilight years, this strategy could truly be invaluable. Cardiovascular disease is the leading killer globally, and frankly, us older folk are particularly vulnerable to it. High blood pressure, elevated levels of bad cholesterol, atherosclerosis, these are all problems many of us are, unfortunately, quite familiar with. So how exactly can something like fasting benefit the health of our vital engine, the heart? Let's take a look at the evidence, point by point. The first, and perhaps one of the most critical factors, is blood pressure. Studies suggest that simply adopting intermittent fasting can help bring those numbers down. Why does this happen? Well, for a couple of reasons. Firstly, it improves insulin sensitivity, which is excellent for making our blood vessels more flexible, more elastic, if you will. Secondly, fasting seems to calm down the autonomic nervous system, encouraging our vessels to relax a bit. Next, we need to talk about your lipid profile. That's your cholesterol and triglyceride levels. Fasting is very effective at reducing triglycerides. Those are the fats in your blood that pose a serious risk when they get too high. It also helps to lower your LDL, or bad cholesterol, the kind that forms those nasty plaques on artery walls. Crucially, the level of HDL, the good cholesterol, often remains stable or can even improve. Thirdly, we look at oxidative stress and inflammation. As we are frequently reminded, these processes are fundamental to damaging the vessels and kickstarting atherosclerosis. By cutting down on inflammation and essentially activating the body's natural protection systems, fasting helps shield the artery walls from damage. Think of your blood vessels like old plumbing pipes. Over time, rust and scale build up, and that is exactly what atherosclerotic plaques are. Fasting helps slow down this internal rusting process. Finally, fasting naturally encourages weight loss, particularly targeting that tricky, visceral fat around our organs. Losing this weight is, in itself, a powerful boost for the entire cardiovascular system. So you see, fasting can be a comprehensive strategy for keeping your heart and vessels healthy, addressing all those critical risk factors at once. Scientists have been talking a lot lately about how our gut isn't just for digesting food. They call it our second brain. Inside we host trillions of bacteria, fungi and viruses. Altogether, that's our microbiota. This incredibly complex world of tiny organisms influences everything: our immune system, our mood, our weight, and even our risk of developing serious illnesses. Unfortunately, as we age, the variety and balance of this essential gut flora tend to decline. We start losing the good bacteria, and the potentially harmful ones begin to flourish. This imbalance, what doctors call dysbiosis, is linked to increased inflammation, a weakened immune system, and something known as leaky gut syndrome. That's when the gut lining becomes too porous, allowing toxins and undigested food particles to slip into the bloodstream. This triggers a chronic immune response, ramping up systemic inflammation throughout the entire body. So, where does fasting come into this? Think of fasting as a complete reset button for your whole gut ecosystem. When we stop eating, we stop feeding our bacteria too. For certain strains, especially those that thrive on sugar and simple carbohydrates, this is a real shock. Their populations drop significantly. At the same time, fasting encourages the growth of more beneficial types of bacteria, the ones that are resilient enough to survive these conditions. Crucially, these good bacteria produce highly beneficial substances, like butyrate. Butyrate is a key anti-inflammatory component. It's the primary energy source for your gut cells, helping to strengthen the intestinal lining and dramatically reduce inflammation. Imagine your gut as a garden. Over time, weeds, the bad bacteria, start to choke out the beneficial plants. Fasting acts like the essential weeding process, giving the useful, healthy cultures a much-needed chance to thrive again. This gut reboot can have profound, long-lasting consequences for older adults, boosting immunity, easing chronic inflammation, and genuinely improving overall well-being. Let's shift our focus now from the positive aspects to the darker side. We need to start with what is arguably the most significant and real danger of fasting for older adults. This involves a word every person over the age of 50 needs to know: sarcopenia. The name itself comes from the Greek meaning poverty of the flesh. Essentially, it's the age-related loss of muscle mass, strength, and overall function. This isn't just about looking less toned. It is a genuine medical condition directly linked to increased frailty, higher risk of falls and fractures, loss of independence, and ultimately, higher mortality rates. Muscles are so much more than just sources of strength. They are our primary metabolic organs, our engine, if you will. They consume glucose, play a crucial role in our immune system, and act as a vital reservoir for amino acids. We begin losing muscle mass around the age of 30, about 1% a year. Crucially, this process accelerates sharply once we hit 60. If we do nothing to counteract it, by the time we reach 80, we could have lost up to half of our total muscle mass. Now imagine superimposing fasting onto this already unfavourable background. Any form of calorie restriction, especially when coupled with inadequate protein intake and zero resistance training, inevitably leads to the loss of not just fat, but muscle as well. For a younger person with excess muscle reserves, this might not be immediately critical, but for the older individual, where every single gram of muscle counts, this can rapidly become catastrophic. Losing even a small amount of muscle tissue can be the final trigger, the tipping point, that shifts them from a state of relative robustness into genuine frailty. They will find it harder to get out of a chair, carry shopping bags, or manage the stairs. The risk of falling and sustaining a fractured hip, which tragically becomes a fatal event for many older people, increases exponentially. Therefore, before you even consider fasting, every older person must ask themselves, what exactly am I doing to maintain my existing muscle? Because fasting that accelerates sarcopenia is certainly not rejuvenation. It is a straight path to serious disability. We've identified our primary enemy, sarcopenia, or age-related muscle loss. But does this automatically put fasting totally off the table for seniors? Not at all. It just means we need a smarter, far more careful approach than those 20-somethings use. The core challenge is this: how do we gain the benefits, autophagy and improved insulin sensitivity, without paying the price of losing our precious muscle mass? There are a few key rules. Rule number 1. Protein is your very best friend. During your eating periods, you must consume an adequate and, frankly, elevated amount of high-quality protein. For older adults, the protein requirement is actually higher than for the young, roughly 1.2 to 1.5 grams per kilogram of ideal body weight. You need to distribute this protein throughout your entire eating window. Crucially, every single meal must contain a dose of protein sufficient to actively stimulate muscle synthesis. That's about 25 to 30 grams per meal. And those sources must be complete. Think meat, poultry, fish, eggs, and dairy, such as cottage cheese. Rule number 2. Resistance training is a necessity, not a luxury. Nothing preserves muscle mass as effectively as working with resistance. This could mean dumbbells, resistance bands, or even just using your own body weight. Resistance exercise sends a powerful signal to the body that your muscles are needed, and therefore, it shouldn't break them down for fuel during a fast. Ideally, you should aim for 2 or 3 sessions a week. Rule number 3. Stick to softer, gentler forms of fasting. Absolutely no multi-day water fasts. The most sensible choice for older beginners is the 16-8 intermittent fasting protocol, where you fast for 16 hours and consume all your meals within an 8-hour window. It is vital that all your protein-rich meals fit within that specific eating window. Fasting without adequate protein intake and resistance training is a guaranteed way for a senior to accelerate aging, not slow it down. That is simply an axiom. The second major hazard facing older people when fasting is dehydration and an electrolyte imbalance. As we get older, our natural sense of thirst often dulls. Older adults frequently don't drink enough water without even realizing it. Furthermore, our kidney function, which manages our essential water and salt balance, also tends to decline. So what happens when we fast? Firstly, we get a significant amount of fluid from our food, especially from fresh fruit and vegetables. When we stop eating, this essential fluid source vanishes. Secondly, when we begin fasting, the body first burns through its glycogen stores. Glycogen is glucose stored mainly in the liver and muscles. Crucially, every single gram of glycogen holds onto 3 to 4 grams of water. As that glycogen is used up, the water bound to it is released. This is exactly why people lose weight so quickly in the first few days of a fast. It's primarily water, not fat. Along with that water loss, the body also loses vital minerals called electrolytes: sodium, potassium, magnesium, and calcium. These substances aren't just simple salts. They are responsible for transmitting nerve signals, contracting our muscles, including the heart muscle, and maintaining healthy blood pressure. For an older person who may already have underlying heart or blood pressure issues, this sudden loss of fluid and electrolytes can be extremely dangerous. Symptoms of dehydration and electrolyte imbalance can include headaches, dizziness, muscle cramps, weakness, confusion, and a racing heart. In severe cases, this can lead to serious issues like arrhythmia, falls, and tragically, even death. That's why, when fasting, drinking water isn't just a recommendation, it's an absolute necessity, a strict rule. But simply drinking plain water may not be enough. it is absolutely vital to monitor your electrolyte intake as well. If you're considering fasting, remember that proper hydration is absolutely key. Water and the right beverages are your essential companions. Think of your fluid intake as a safety net. It keeps dehydration and its nasty consequences at bay. How much should you drink? There's no exact figure, as it depends on your body weight, how active you are, and the weather. The best indicator is the colour of your urine. Ideally, it should be a pale straw colour. If it's dark, you simply aren't drinking enough. But what exactly should be in your cup? Plain clean water is the foundation. You can opt for still or mineral water. Mineral water is particularly useful as it can help top up some of those vital electrolytes. Unsweetened herbal teas are a marvellous addition. Think chamomile, peppermint or lime flower, linden. They're calorie-free, help keep your fluids interesting, and often have a pleasant calming effect. Now, black and green tea and coffee are usually fine in moderation. However, remember that caffeine is a diuretic, meaning it makes you lose fluid. A good rule of thumb is to follow every cup of coffee with an extra glass of plain water. What about electrolytes? The simplest way to replace them is to add just a tiny pinch of good quality sea salt or Himalayan pink salt to your water. This provides sodium and crucial trace minerals. To boost potassium and magnesium, some people use sugar-free electrolyte powders which are readily available at chemists or sports shops. You can also easily make a homemade version. To a litre of water, add a quarter of a teaspoon of salt, the juice of half a lemon, which is high in potassium, and perhaps a drop of a natural sweetener like stevia if you prefer. What must you categorically avoid? Anything sweet, sugary drinks, fruit juices, and fizzy pop. These will cause an immediate insulin spike and completely break your fast. Also, be careful with broths. While some people drink them, bone broth, for example, contains amino acids that can interfere with the true fasting state. Maintaining proper fluid intake during a fast is every bit as important as the decision to abstain from food itself. The third serious risk, and we need to talk about this clearly and emphatically, is hypoglycemia, or the dangerous drop in your blood sugar level. This is especially important for older people who already have type 2 diabetes or prediabetes and are taking medication to lower blood sugar or using insulin. How does this happen? These medications are designed to bring your blood glucose down, usually after a meal. If you take your regular dose of medicine but don't eat anything, your sugar level can crash to critically low levels. This state is actually far more dangerous than having high sugar. Remember, the brain desperately needs energy, and when glucose drops sharply, its function is immediately disrupted. Hypoglycemia symptoms can develop very quickly. Sudden weakness, shaking hands, cold sweats, an intense feeling of hunger, dizziness, and a rapid heartbeat. If you don't take action immediately, more serious issues will follow: confusion, slurred speech, loss of coordination, fainting, and potentially even a coma. For an older person, an episode like this often leads to a dangerous fall and serious injury. That's why there is a golden rule. Never start fasting if you are taking blood sugar lowering medication without first consulting your doctor to adjust your dosages. This is simply not the time to take matters into your own hands. Your physician must assess the risks and may need to temporarily reduce or stop certain medications while you fast. Even if you don't have diabetes, but you are naturally very slim or prone to low blood sugar, you must be extremely cautious. Start fasting very gradually with short time periods and listen carefully to your body. At the first sign of hypoglycemia, you must immediately break the fast. Drink sweet tea or eat something high in carbohydrates. Safety must always come first. When we discuss what we eat, we tend to focus heavily on the main things: calories, protein, fats, and carbs. But it's easy to overlook those tiny yet absolutely vital players, our vitamins and minerals. They don't provide energy themselves, but without them, almost every essential chemical process in our body would simply stop. Think of them as the spark plugs in a car engine. As we get older, our body's need for certain micronutrients actually increases, while our ability to absorb them from the food we eat often declines. For example, older adults frequently struggle with deficiencies in vitamin D, vitamin B12, calcium, and magnesium. Now imagine reducing your eating time down to 8, 6, or perhaps even just 4 hours a day. If you practice this kind of restricted eating, it means you must manage to consume your entire daily requirement, not just of calories and protein, but all those crucial vitamins and minerals within that very short feeding window. If that short window is filled with processed foods like pastries and sausages, deficiencies will set in alarmingly fast. Restricted eating is not an excuse for unhealthy choices. Quite the opposite. It places much higher demands on the quality of your diet. Every single meal needs to be packed with maximum nutrition and beneficial compounds. This translates to eating plenty of colourful vegetables. Think of all the colours of the rainbow, along with high-quality protein sources and healthy fats. If your diet is inadequate, pairing it with fasting can lead to severe deficiencies very quickly. For instance, a lack of potassium and magnesium can trigger heart rhythm problems or severe muscle cramps. B vitamin deficiencies will negatively impact your nervous system, and insufficient calcium and vitamin D will rapidly accelerate the onset of osteoporosis. Therefore, before you even consider starting any kind of fasting regimen, you really must take an honest look at your current daily diet. Is it sufficiently varied? Are you getting everything you need? It might be wise to request blood tests for the key vitamins and minerals. If necessary, and always following your doctor's advice, you may need to start taking supplements. Trying to fast when you already have underlying deficiencies is a guaranteed route to worsening your health, not improving it. If, after everything you've heard, you're still considering giving fasting a go, the natural question is, where do I even begin? For someone in their later years, the answer is clear. Start with the gentlest and safest method available. That is intermittent fasting using the 16-8 approach. So, what exactly does that entail? It means your day is divided into 2 distinct phases. First, there's the 16-hour fasting period, where you only consume 0-calorie drinks. Think plain water, herbal teas, or black coffee without sugar. Secondly, there's the 8-hour eating window, where you fit in all your daily meals. For instance, you might have your first meal at 10 in the morning and your last meal by 6 in the evening. Or, if skipping breakfast suits you better, your first meal could be at noon and your final meal at 8 p.m. The main goal is simply to manage 16 full hours without consuming any calories. Why is this particular schedule considered the best starting point, especially for older people? Firstly, it's psychologically much easier to handle. You spend a good chunk of the fasting period asleep anyway. Secondly, 16 hours is just long enough to start reducing your insulin levels and initiate those crucial initial processes of autophagy. Crucially, the risk of serious side effects, like low blood sugar or severe electrolyte imbalance, is minimal compared to those doing longer fasts. Thirdly, the 8-hour window gives you plenty of time to fit in 2 or 3 nutritious meals and still hit your necessary daily targets for calories, protein, and micronutrients. This is absolutely vital for preventing deficiencies and avoiding muscle loss, what the experts call sarcopenia. Now you must ease yourself into this regime gently. Don't dive in head first. You could start with a 12-hour fast, then perhaps push it to 14 hours, and only once your body has truly adapted, move on to the full 16 hours. It is essential to listen to your body throughout this process. If you feel profound weakness, dizziness, or nausea, that is a clear signal to stop or take a step back. Remember, the 16-8 method is a marathon, not a sprint. It's an adjustment to your lifestyle, not a restrictive short-term diet. In the world of fasting, there are also more advanced, stricter approaches. For instance, the full 24-hour fast, often referred to as eat, stop, eat. The idea here is that once or twice a week, you pick a day and simply do not eat for a full 24 hours. Say you have dinner at 7 p.m. on Monday. Your next meal wouldn't be until dinner at 7 p.m. on Tuesday. An even more extreme version is OMAD, which stands for 1 meal a day. With OMAD, you restrict all your eating to just 1 hour during the day, fasting for the other 23 hours. These methods are often touted for promoting deeper autophagy and yielding faster results for weight loss and improving insulin sensitivity. However, for older adults, these protocols carry significantly higher risks. Firstly, enduring 24 hours without food can be tremendously difficult, both physically and psychologically. The danger of low blood sugar, dehydration, and severe fatigue increases considerably. Secondly, and this is the most crucial point for seniors, it becomes extremely difficult to meet your daily nutritional requirements in such a restrictive window. Imagine having to consume 1,500 to 2,000 calories, 100 grams of protein, a substantial portion of vegetables and healthy fats, all in one sitting. For an older person who often has a reduced appetite and slower digestion, this is often simply an impossible task. As a result, these kinds of severe fasts almost guarantee a deficiency in protein and micronutrients, which in turn accelerates the loss of crucial muscle mass. This is why these strict fasting methods are not recommended and can actually be dangerous for the vast majority of older people. They should only ever be considered in very exceptional cases, under the strictest supervision of an experienced doctor, and only for those who already have significant experience with much milder forms of fasting and who have absolutely no contraindications. For everyone else, this is an unnecessary and unwarranted risk. Now, despite all its potential benefits, fasting is certainly not a cure-all, and it is definitely not suitable for everyone. There are certain groups of people for whom it isn't just ill-advised, it is strictly forbidden. Attempting to fast, if you have any of these conditions, could lead to serious and irreversible health complications. So who absolutely should not fast? First, and perhaps the most obvious group, are those who are underweight, meaning those with a body mass index, or BMI, below 18.5. People in this category simply don't have enough fat reserves. Their bodies will quickly start breaking down muscle and even internal organs just to find energy. Second, individuals with a history of eating disorders, such as anorexia or bulimia. Fasting can act as a serious trigger for a relapse of these complex mental health conditions. Third, pregnant or breastfeeding women. During these vital periods, the body requires a constant and sufficient supply of nutrients to support the baby's development. Fourth, people with serious chronic conditions that are poorly managed or in a state of decompensation. This includes severe heart failure, kidney or liver failure, or uncontrolled type 1 diabetes. For an already weakened system, fasting can be an overwhelming stressor and can significantly worsen the underlying disease. Fifth, anyone taking specific medications that must be consumed with food, or drugs that can cause dangerous side effects on an empty stomach. For instance, certain non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, or NSAIDs, can severely damage the lining of the stomach if taken without food. Sixth, people who are about to undergo surgery or those who are currently recovering from an operation. The body needs every available resource for healing and repair. Fasting at this time is entirely inappropriate. We should also add that extreme caution should be taken by individuals who suffer from gout, as fasting can significantly raise uric acid levels and those with a history of gallstones. If any of these conditions apply to you, the idea of fasting must be absolutely ruled out until you have had a thorough consultation with your general practitioner or a specialist. I know I've mentioned this before, but I want to dedicate our whole critical section to this one point. For us older folk, seeing your GP before you start any kind of fasting is not just ticking a box or fulfilling a formality. It is absolutely crucial for your safety and well-being. Why do I keep emphasizing this? Firstly, only a medical professional can properly assess your current health and spot any underlying issues or red flags. You might feel perfectly fine, but you could have the early stages of a condition you don't even know about. and fasting could potentially make it flare up. Secondly, your doctor needs to look closely at your medication list. As we've discussed, the dosage for certain drugs, perhaps those for diabetes or high blood pressure, might need careful adjustment. Trying to change these doses on your own is extremely dangerous. Thirdly, your GP can order the necessary tests to establish your baseline. This might include a standard blood panel, checking your blood sugar and HbA1c, liver and kidney function, plus your essential vitamin and mineral levels. This helps us catch any deficiencies before you start fasting and allows us to track changes properly as you go. So, what exactly should you discuss with your doctor? Tell them precisely what type of fasting you intend to try. Be completely honest about your typical diet and how active you usually are. Go through all your chronic conditions and every single medication you take. Ask them directly, is intermittent fasting safe for me, Mace? What specific risks should I be aware of in my personal case? Which symptoms should I watch out for? How often will I need follow-up blood tests? If your doctor dismisses the idea of fasting outright, or conversely, if they approve it without running any proper checks, that's a good sign. You need to find a different, more knowledgeable specialist. Your health is ultimately your own responsibility, so you must approach such a serious change to your body with the utmost care and awareness. We've spent a lot of time discussing the physical effects of fasting, but we often overlook the mental or psychological impact. Any restriction, any deviation from our normal routine puts a certain amount of stress on both our bodies and our minds, and hunger itself is one of the oldest and most potent forms of stress we know. When we fast, our bodies naturally increase the level of the stress hormone, cortisol. In the short term, this is perfectly normal and can even be beneficial, as cortisol helps us tap into our stored energy reserves. However, if that stress becomes chronic, consistently high levels of cortisol can do more harm than good. It can interfere with sleep, increase feelings of anxiety, contribute to muscle loss, and even suppress the immune system. For older adults who may already be more vulnerable to stress and perhaps struggle with sleep, this is particularly relevant. It's vital, therefore, to approach fasting not as a harsh punishment, but as a mindful, conscious practice. If you find yourself obsessing over food, feeling constantly irritated or angry, or if the hunger is keeping you awake at night, then perhaps your chosen schedule is simply too strict. It's wise to take a step back, opt for a gentler approach, or perhaps even stop the practice for a while. Learning to manage stress is key. Things like meditation, simple breathing exercises, or just taking a gentle walk outdoors can make a real difference here. Crucially, don't turn fasting into a rigid obsession, and don't beat yourself up if you slip up. If you can't manage the planned fasting window, it really isn't the end of the world. Just get back to your chosen routine the following day. Your mental well-being is every bit as important as your physical metrics. If fasting starts to feel like a daily ordeal or a torture, you won't reap the benefits. Remember, the goal is to improve your health and quality of life, not to introduce another source of stress and anxiety. Listen, not just to your stomach, but also to your emotional state. Right, let's assume you've successfully managed your fast, be it 16 hours or perhaps a full 24. You feel lighter, a real sense of accomplishment, don't you? It's easy to think the hardest part is finally over, but that sadly can be a dangerous misconception. Breaking a fasting correctly can not only completely negate all the benefits you work so hard for, but it can actually cause serious harm. This is particularly true if you've been fasting for longer than a full day. There's a genuinely dangerous condition we need to discuss, known as refeeding syndrome. When your body has gone without food for a while, the levels of essential minerals in your bloodstream, especially phosphorus, potassium, and magnesium, drop significantly. If you then suddenly eat a large amount of food, particularly anything high in carbohydrates, your body unleashes a powerful flood of insulin. This insulin then rapidly pushes not just the glucose into your cells, but also the remaining traces of those vital minerals from your blood. Their levels crash to critically low points. This sudden drop can trigger severe problems with your heart, your respiratory system, and your neurological function. Now, for a more fragile or elderly body, this shock can unfortunately be fatal. So, the golden rule when you break a fast is smoothness and moderation. You absolutely must not suddenly gorge yourself. Your digestive system has been having a lovely rest, and we need to ease it back into action gradually. So, what should you start with? Your ideal first meal needs to be something light, something that won't cause that huge spike in insulin. This could be a small helping of vegetable salad with just a drizzle of olive oil, a simple pureed vegetable soup, or even a little bit of fermented food like sauerkraut, which is brilliant for getting those good gut bacteria moving again. After about an hour or 90 minutes, you can introduce some protein, a small piece of poached chicken or fish, or perhaps a couple of boiled eggs. But do try to steer clear of simple carbohydrates in those first few hours. That means bread, sweet treats, and fruits high on the glycemic index. Portion size matters hugely too. Keep it small. Remember, your objective isn't to stuff yourself silly, but rather to safely and smoothly guide your body back to its regular eating pattern. Right then, let's wrap up. What are the key takeaways from today's discussion? Fasting for the elderly is an incredibly potent tool, a true double-edged sword, offering tremendous rejuvenating potential alongside genuinely fatal risks. On the one hand, we have the magic of autophagy, that crucial cellular housekeeping mechanism which can protect against age-related decline. We see a boost in growth hormone, improved insulin sensitivity, a marked reduction in inflammation, and even neuroprotection. These are real, scientifically proven mechanisms that could significantly extend our healthy, active years. But on the other hand, just like any powerful medicine, fasting carries severe side effects that can, for an older person, prove absolutely devastating. The principal adversary here is sarcopenia, the loss of precious muscle mass, which rapidly leads to frailty and the loss of independence. Close behind are the risks of dehydration, serious nutrient deficiency, and a dangerous drop in blood sugar or hypoglycemia. The key conclusion we must draw is straightforward. Fasting for the elderly is absolutely not for everyone, and it is certainly not something you should attempt on your own. This is precision work requiring deep knowledge, extreme caution, mandatory medical supervision, and most crucially, a highly individualized, bespoke approach. There is no single template that fits all. What might prove to be an elixir of youth for one person could quickly turn into a tragedy for another. Therefore, please treat your health as your most precious asset. Research, analyze, but always consult with medical professionals. Thank you for watching this important discussion right through to the end. If you found this information valuable, please do hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our future explorations of complex health topics. Now, I want to pose a question to you, our audience. Please share your experience or your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think the benefits outweigh the risks? Are you personally prepared to consider fasting after taking all this information into account? Let's begin a candid and open discussion.